In this video, I really want to talk about two big fall bass fishing myths. These are things that I remember growing up when I was really getting into bass fishing, things that I read all the time, things even to this day that you hear a lot of times, but there are just things that I feel like are a little bit untrue when it comes to fall fishing. Now, before we get into the video, this one is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. Right now for the month of September 2024, I'm running kind of a package deal. You can actually get a USA made sun shirt and a pair of sun gloves for 60 bucks. So it's basically like getting a pair of sun gloves for an extra $6. So it's a really good deal. This is one of the most popular products on my website. I'm constantly out of stock in them. Right now I have a decent stock of them. So anyways, guys, all you got to do, add the sun shirt that you like to cart, add the sun gloves that you like to cart. It will automatically discount at checkout. I greatly appreciate every single one of you who has spent the time and spent the money to help support this channel. So thank you guys. All right, let's talk about fall bass fishing. Now, real quick, before we get into the myths, I did want to just encourage a lot of you guys to get out more in the fall, because if you look at bass fishing trends, throughout the year, there's a lot of people who are not bass fishing in the month of, September, October, November, December, all the way really through about February. There's a lot of guys who are not fishing, and I get it. There's a lot of you out there who are hunting, and if you are a diehard hunter, I'm not going to say to step away from hunting because I know you can only do it for so long, but I do want to encourage some of you guys who maybe just don't like to fish that much in the fall to just do it this year, because over the years I've really forced myself to be out there in the fall, because sometimes I don't always like to do it. Sometimes I like to just watch football on TV on a Saturday, but I can tell you what, fall fishing has become one of my favorites. You can catch some absolute giants in the fall, and you don't have to deal with a lot of anglers, and you don't have to deal with a ton of pleasure boaters, and we all can say hallelujah to that. So anyways, let's talk about these bass fishing myths, these fall bass fishing myths. Now, the first one that you will hear all the time when it comes to fall bass fishing is that bass are going to migrate to the backs of creeks. Now, is this completely untrue? No, because it definitely is true on certain bodies of water and at certain times of the year. But I remember growing up reading about this, like this was the deal. Like, I remember going out and literally just focusing on the backs of creeks. And I also remember coming home from some of those days empty-handed. And so one of the biggest things that I have learned when it comes to fall bass fishing is that bass are everywhere during the fall. You will catch bass deep. You will catch bass shallow. You will catch bass everywhere in between. And one of the best places to target when it comes to fall bass fishing are what I like to call funnels. And you will also hear these called ditches and drains at times. So especially if you live in like the Carolinas or the Tennessees of the world, a lot of other places you will hear ditches and drains a lot. I like to call them funnels because a funnel can be everywhere on the lake, and they also are probably the most productive area in the fall. Now, if you think about a creek arm or the back of a creek, this really is the perfect funnel. If you think of the back of a creek, it's just like a funnel, right? It comes to kind of a point. Sometimes you will have an actual creek that flows in. But what bass do a lot in the fall is they are feeding pretty heavily as the water temperatures start to cool. They are going to push bait into that funnel, and then you will catch them in the top of that funnel. Now, will this happen in the backs of creeks at times? Yes, but more times than not, I have found that any type of funnel out there, any type of area on the bottom that makes these funnels can be a potential area where you will catch fall bass. And for me, I catch them a lot more on the main lake in a lot of the areas that I fish. When you kind of find these funnel areas, and basically a funnel, if you think about it, it's the area between 2 points. If you have two big points that stick out in a creek arm, that area in between is a funnel, and that is where you're going to have a lot of fish, a lot of bass pushing bait fish, and that is where they're going to feed up. That is where we're going to catch them. So can the backs of creeks be good? Yes, but I have found way more times out there that I'm just going to be looking for funnels. And that is where I catch a lot of fall fish, as well as just kind of everywhere. I mean, fall bass fishing is is a junk fisherman's paradise, as we have talked so much. Now, let's talk about myth number 2. One of the reasons that you can catch bass everywhere is because there is bait fish everywhere in the fall. And I'm talking about everywhere from 20 foot deep, 30 foot deep to 2 foot deep, 1 foot deep, everywhere in between. There's tons of young of the year shad. You will get to the lake if it's really calm and you will see bait balls all over the place during the fall. And so that is why a lot of times you have bass everywhere. And the other thing that I hear, this is the myth now, is that you hear guys talk about matching the hatch. That is a huge term that you hear a lot when it comes to bass fishing. And I get it. Matching the hatch is very important for a lot of times of the year. When you go out there, if you know the bass are eating, you know, a 3 to 5 inch bluegill, and you can get a bait that really mimics that, maybe a swim jig, maybe a bluegill style glide bait, or you know that the bass are eating, you know, shad, and you can kind of go with something that's white in color, that tends to work throughout the year. But in the fall, because there is so much bait fish, I have seen a lot more times than not that kind of mismatching the hatch is actually the way to go. And let me explain this really easily. A number of years ago, I was fishing a tournament and I was using a square bill. That was my primary bait that I was catching fish on, but I just felt like I should be catching more. Have you ever gone to the lake and you're like, man, I feel like I'm around a lot of fish, but I'm just not catching a lot of fish? And I was using this square bill that I'm telling you, it was identical to the bait fish in the area. There was a lot of these little 2-inch shad that were everywhere. They were shad, you know, so they're black on the back, kind of white, got that dot. My square bill was identical to them. And I was catching a few fish, but I just felt like I should have been catching more. And I made a very, very simple change. And I went, instead of using that white color crankbait, I went to using a chartreuse black back crankbait, okay? Something that was, chartreuse blueback crankbait. So it was something that was a lot brighter and it really stood out from the shad. And I'm telling you what, it was almost automatic. As soon as I picked that up, it just seemed like the fish were getting that bait a lot deeper and I was catching more bass. And so it was all to me about mismatching the hatch. There's 5 bajillion fish out there, bait fish out there. If you're throwing a bait that looks exactly like them, I think it just kind of gets lost. And so sometimes in the fall, I like to mismatch the hatch. I would love to hear some of your guys' input when it comes to that, because I've definitely seen that. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, where you live in the country and what you have seen. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out the fin fishing gear. This is my latest video, and I will see you guys tomorrow.